My name is Emily, I'm 40, and my husband didn't just cheat on me, he got my own sister pregnant. Before I tell you how I systematically dismantled their lives and took everything they thought they were entitled to, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. It all imploded on our 5th wedding anniversary. That date, which I used to think of as a milestone, is now just a scar. I'd spent the entire afternoon orchestrating the perfect evening. I'd slow-cooked a beef bourguignon, his favorite meal, the kind that fills the whole house with a rich, warm scent. It was the kind of fancy, time-consuming dinner we could never afford when we were first married, living off my entry-level salary while he chased his dreams. I'd picked up a bottle of the good wine, not the cheap stuff we usually bought. I lit candles, the expensive tapered ones, and set them on the dining table we'd saved for a year to buy. I put on the silk dress he'd once said made me look like a movie star. I was trying to recapture something, a spark I felt had been dimming for months. And then I waited. The clock on the mantelpiece, a wedding gift from my parents, seemed to mock me. 9 p.m. ticked by. I told myself he was stuck in traffic. 10 p.m. I sent a text. No reply. I told myself his phone had died. At 11 p.m., the perfectly cooked meal was cold, and a knot of dread was tightening in my stomach. By midnight, the candles had burned down to puddles of wax. The dread had turned into a cold, hard certainty. He wasn't coming. Not to me, anyway. He finally stumbled through the front door at 2 in the morning. James. My husband of 5 years. He didn't just look tired, he looked guilty. His shirt was untucked and wrinkled, his tie was gone, and his hair was a mess, as if someone had been running their hands through it. And then there was the smell. A cloyingly sweet perfume I didn't own, clinging to him like a shroud. He froze when he saw me standing there, silhouetted by the dim light from the kitchen. He couldn't even look me in the eye. Working late, he mumbled, his voice thick. He tried to sidestep me, to make a run for the safety of our bedroom. I didn't move. I just stood there, a silent statue in my now wrinkled dress, blocking his path. Working late? I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. On our anniversary, James? It was a client emergency, he lied, his eyes darting around the room, anywhere but at me. A huge deal. I couldn't get away. A huge deal, I echoed. I took a step closer, close enough to see a faint lipstick smudge on his collar. My heart didn't break, it felt like it was turning to stone. Was the client's name Olivia? The name hung in the air between us, heavy and toxic. He flinched as if I'd slapped him. That's all the confirmation I needed. The carefully constructed walls of his lies came crashing down. The whole story came tumbling out in a pathetic, sordid mess of excuses and half-truths. He'd been seeing my sister, my little sister Olivia, for 6 months. He said it just happened. He said he was confused, that he felt a spark with her he hadn't felt with me in years. He said he was going to tell me. He just needed to find the right time. The air left my lungs. The entire world just stopped. The flickering candlelight cast long, dancing shadows on the walls of the life I thought we'd built together, making everything look distorted and unfamiliar. In that suffocating silence, I felt something shift deep inside me. It wasn't sadness that was flooding my system, not the hot tears of grief. It was ice. A glacial coldness that started in my chest and spread through my veins, freezing everything in its path. He must have mistaken my silence for shock, for weakness. He must have thought I was about to break down, to crumble. Because then, he decided to deliver the final blow, the one he thought would shatter me completely. He finally looked at me, his expression a sickening, cowardly mix of guilt and defiance. There's more, he said, his voice barely a whisper. She's pregnant, Emily. Pregnant. My sister was pregnant with my husband's child. The words didn't even seem real. It was a line from a trashy soap opera, not my life. I stared at him, at this stranger standing in my house. the man I had loved, the man I had sacrificed for, the man I had built my entire world around. And in that moment, I felt absolutely nothing for him. No love. No hate. No anger. Just a vast, empty void. The part of me that had loved James, that had been capable of being hurt by him, had just been surgically removed without anesthesia. I took a slow, deliberate breath. My voice, when it came out, was not the shriek he probably expected. It was steady, level, and dangerously calm. Get out of my house. To understand why I didn't just fall apart, why I didn't spend the next year crying into a pint of ice cream, you need to understand the dynamic of my family. It wasn't just a betrayal by two people, it was the culmination of a lifetime of being the other daughter. Olivia was the golden child. She was the artist, the free spirit, the one who felt things so deeply. I was the responsible one, the practical one. The one who got good grades, who chose a stable career in finance, who remembered birthdays and paid bills on time. I was the reliable bedrock, and a bedrock is meant to be stood upon, not celebrated. The favoritism was a constant, low hum in the background of my life. I remember one Sunday dinner a few years back, a scene that now plays in my mind in crystal clear detail. I'd just been given a major promotion at my firm. I was now a vice president. It was a huge step, the result of years of 60-hour workweeks and sacrificing my social life. I was so proud, so excited to tell them. I walked in, and the entire family was gathered in the living room, fawning over Olivia. She was showing off her latest abstract painting, a large canvas of chaotic blue and green splotches that looked like she'd dropped a bucket of paint. "Oh, honey, you're a real artist," my mother gushed, her eyes shining. My father nodded, beaming with a pride he rarely showed me. A true talent in the family. You see the world differently. When I finally found a gap in the conversation to share my news, the reaction was lukewarm. "Oh, that's nice, dear," my mother said, patting my hand before turning her attention back to Olivia's masterpiece. "A stable job. That's good for you." My father added, "Well, someone's got to be the sensible one, right?" My promotion, my years of relentless hard work, were reduced to being nice and sensible. It was always like that. My accomplishments were practicalities, hers were passions. And I, the sensible one, was always expected to support those passions. The most painful memory is the day James decided to start his own consulting firm. He had the vision, the charisma, but no capital. We were sitting at our small kitchen table, the one I'd found on Craigslist and refinished myself. He had his business plan spread out, his eyes shining with a dreamer's fire. "I just need a little more to get this off the ground, he'd said, taking my hands in his. "I'm so close. This isn't just for me, it's for us. For our future. Imagine it." I didn't have to imagine. I wanted to believe in it. I wanted to believe in him. So I did what I always did. I logged into my personal investment account. I looked at my 401k, the money I'd been carefully, diligently saving since my first real job. It was my safety net, my independence, the money I'd earmarked to go back to school for my master's degree. I remember hesitating, my cursor hovering over the confirm transfer button. A knot of anxiety tightened in my gut. But I looked at James's hopeful face, and I pushed it down. I clicked the button. I sacrificed my dream for his. I thought that's what love was. A week after that horrible anniversary night, I had to go back to my parents' house to pick up some old photo albums and documents I needed. I had called ahead, hoping to just run in and out. But I should have known better. It was an ambush. When I walked in, they were all there, arranged in the living room like a tribunal. My mother and father on the sofa, and James and a visibly pregnant Olivia on the love seat opposite them. She was already starting to show, and James had his arm wrapped protectively around her. The scene was so grotesquely domestic it made me want to be sick. Emily, darling, my mother began, her voice dripping with that false, gentle sympathy she used when she was about to be cruel. We're so glad you came. We all need to be adults about this. I just stood in the doorway, clutching an empty cardboard box, the silence of the room pressing in on me. The walls were covered in Olivia's paintings. I couldn't find a single photo of myself. Your sister made a mistake, my father said, his voice stern, his eyes filled with disappointment, directed at me. People make mistakes. But now there's a baby involved. An innocent new life. Family is the most important thing. It's what you do in a crisis that defines you. Olivia, for her part, just sat there, clutching James's hand, her eyes downcast in a perfect, theatrical imitation of remorse. She didn't say a word. She let them fight her battle for her, just like always. Then my mother delivered the line that severed the final, frayed thread of family obligation I had left. It takes a village to raise a child, Emily. Olivia needs your support, not your judgment. She's fragile right now. You've always been the strong one. You need to find it in your heart to forgive them. Forgive. They wanted me to forgive. To stand by and watch my husband and sister build a life on the ruins of mine. To support them. To be the bigger person. I looked at the four of them, a cozy, smug little unit of betrayal, and I felt the last flicker of warmth inside me die out. Replaced by something cold, hard, and purposeful. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't say a word. I simply turned around, placed the empty box on the porch, and walked away. I didn't just walk away from that house. I walked away from the person I used to be, the nice, responsible, forgiving Emily. She was dead and buried. And standing on her grave was a woman with a score to settle. The next few weeks were a blur of finding a new apartment, consulting with a divorce lawyer, and trying to untangle my life from his. The public humiliation was swift and brutal. James and Olivia, free from the pretense of secrecy, leaned into their narrative. They posted ultrasound pictures with gushing captions about unexpected blessings and finding true love when you least expect it. They even posted a photo of them together, with Olivia's hand on her stomach, captioned, "Sometimes true love has to break the rules to find its way." The comments were a sickening mix of congratulations and pity for me. Mutual friends I'd had for years either picked a side, theirs, or just vanished into awkward silence. I felt like a ghost haunting the edges of my own life. I was at my lowest point, sitting on the floor of my sterile, temporary apartment surrounded by boxes I had no energy to unpack, when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. My name is Nathan. I'm, or was, James's business partner. We need to talk. I think I have something you'll want to see. My first instinct was to block the number. I wanted nothing to do with James, his business, his life. But curiosity, a cold, sharp curiosity, got the better of me. What could his partner possibly want with me? We agreed to meet the next day at a small, anonymous coffee shop halfway between my new apartment and his office. Nathan was in his mid-40s, with tired eyes that had seen too much, but a firm, determined set to his jaw. He looked like a man who had been through a war. He didn't waste time with small talk. He got straight to the point. James isn't just a cheater, Emily, he said, his voice low and intense. He's a thief. And a liar. He laid out a story that was chillingly familiar. For the past year, James had been systematically draining the company. He was cooking the books, creating fake invoices, and padding expense reports to finance his secret life with Olivia. Fancy dinners, weekend getaways, expensive gifts, all paid for with company money. My money. Nathan's money. But it was worse than that. James had been planning to push Nathan out completely. He'd used a recent capital call, convincing Nathan and other investors to put more money in, only to use that influx to dilute Nathan's shares in the company they had built together from the ground up, effectively staging a hostile takeover from within. James had timed it perfectly, leaving Nathan with a pittance of his original investment. The news of my divorce was the final piece of the puzzle for him. He realized James was trying to clean house, getting rid of everyone he'd wronged all at once. "He betrayed us both," Nathan said, his jaw tight with anger. "He used your support to build the company, and he used my trust to rob it blind. He didn't just hand me a simple USB drive. It was more sophisticated, more damning. He slid a piece of paper across the table. On it was a long, encrypted password. This will give you a 24-hour window of access to the company's unscrubbed back-end servers," he explained. "The real balance sheets, not the fake ones he shows investors. The internal emails he thinks he deleted. The real-time logs of the wire transfers. It's all there. It's raw data, Emily. A chaotic mess. But I have a feeling you'll know what to do with it." He looked me straight in the eye, and I saw a shared purpose. "I'm a numbers guy, but I'm not a fighter. I need an artist to turn this chaos into a weapon." That night, sleep was a forgotten luxury. I sat in front of my laptop, the glow of the screen the only light in my dark apartment. I typed in the long, complicated password. A world of numbers, spreadsheets, and file directories flooded my vision. It was a labyrinth, just as Nathan had said. But I was a finance professional. Labyrinths like this were my specialty. I worked through the night, fueled by black coffee and a cold, rising fury. I saw it all. The transfer to a high-end jewelry store the day before my birthday. I'd gotten a card. I saw the hotel bookings for business trips to cities where we had no clients. I saw the inflated invoices from shell companies he'd set up. And I saw the steady, methodical stream of cash being funneled into a private account under a name I didn't recognize. The dates of the transfers corresponded perfectly with the timeline of his affair. My grief, that dull, heavy ache in my chest, found a new focus. It sharpened from a blunt instrument of pain into a laser beam of purpose. This wasn't about a broken heart anymore. It was about grand larceny. It was about a fraudulent business, a stolen future, and a balance sheet that was bleeding red ink. And I knew, with absolute and chilling certainty, exactly how to liquidate every last asset. The plan began to form in my mind, not out of rage, but out of cold, hard, beautiful logic. It was time to go to work. The first step was to rebuild myself, not for his benefit, not for revenge, but for war. I started with the physical. I joined a gym and was there at 5 a.m. every morning. The burn in my muscles wasn't about looking good in a new dress, it was about feeling strong enough to carry the weight of what I was about to do. Every rep, every mile on the treadmill, was me forging myself into someone unbreakable. I went to a top salon and had them cut off the long hair James had always said he loved. I donated it. I bought a new wardrobe, sharp blazers, tailored trousers, silk blouses. It wasn't a makeover, it was armor. The next, most crucial step, was professional. My old firm was respectable, but I needed a bigger platform, a bigger cannon. I needed to be inside a fortress. I remembered Mr. Sterling, the legendary CEO of Sterling Capital, the biggest and most aggressive investment firm in the city. He was a shark. I had met him once, years ago, at a financial conference where I'd challenged one of his panelists during a Q&A session. He'd seemed impressed by my nerve. I dug through my old files and found his business card. I didn't just send a resume. I requested a 15-minute meeting. I walked into his intimidating, top-floor office with a single-page proposal and a spine of steel. The proposal had no names, just columns of numbers. On the left, the official, public financials of James's company. On the right, the real numbers I had pieced together from the server data, showing a company hemorrhaging cash, leveraged to the hilt, and teetering on the edge of insolvency. I slid it across his vast mahogany desk. "That company," I said, my voice steady, "is a house of cards held together by lies. Their creditors are getting nervous, and their key investors are blind. I know exactly which card to pull to make the whole thing fall. And when it does, Sterling Capital can acquire its assets for pennies on the dollar. He studied the paper, then looked at me, his eyes sharp and assessing. This is personal for you. Personal is messy. I don't do messy. I met his gaze without flinching. Personal is motivated, I replied. Messy is my ex-husband's balance sheet. I do clean. A slow, calculating smile spread across his face. He hired me the next day. The promotion and salary package he gave me were staggering, but it wasn't about the money. It was about the resources. He gave me a title, Vice President of Mergers and Acquisitions, a team of analysts, and his implicit blessing to hunt. The plan was a campaign of 1,000 cuts, executed with surgical precision. With Nathan's inside knowledge of the company culture and my firm's immense power, we began a silent, systematic assault. I knew which investors were most risk-averse, which suppliers operated on the tightest margins, which clients were most sensitive to reputation. I used back channels and anonymous data drops to leak curated bits of information, a concerning cash flow analysis here, an unsettling debt-to-equity ratio there. One by one, like dominoes in a line, they started to get nervous. A major supplier tightened their credit terms. A key investor announced they were pulling their next round of funding to reevaluate. It was a death by 1,000 paper cuts. But even with a plan as solid as iron, there were nights the weight of it all felt crushing. There was one evening, I was working late, my team had gone home, and I was staring at a spreadsheet filled with the names of James's employees. People with families, with mortgages. People who would lose their jobs because of what I was doing. A wave of doubt washed over me. I found an old photo of James and me on my phone, from a vacation years ago. We looked so happy, so oblivious. The ice around my heart threatened to thaw, and the grief hit me like a tidal wave. Is this worth it? I thought. Maybe I should just let it go, walk away with my new job and my new life. In a moment of weakness, I picked up my phone and called Nathan. My voice was shaky. I don't know if I can do this. There are real people who are going to get hurt. There was a pause on the other end. Then he said, his voice firm but kind, they're already getting hurt, Emily. He's been lying to them for years. He's been gambling with their salaries, with their futures, to fund his own ego. You're not the one hurting them, you're the one ending the deception. Remember why you're doing this. He built his new life on a foundation of lies. It's time to foreclose. His words were the steel I needed. I took a deep breath, deleted the photo from my phone, and turned back to the spreadsheet. He was right. The pity party was over. The final act was set for a Tuesday morning in October. James, in a desperate, last-ditch effort to save his crumbling empire, had called an emergency all-hands town hall meeting. He told his employees and his few remaining loyal investors that he was about to announce a major strategic partnership that would secure the company's future. He was, in essence, betting everything he had left on one last, spectacular lie. He was a showman to the very end. He had, of course, invited his family for support. I knew Olivia would be there, sitting in the front row, a triumphant, pregnant Madonna, ready to watch her man snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. His parents would be there, beaming with pride at their son, the resilient survivor. He was setting the perfect stage for his own execution. I walked into the auditorium a few minutes after the meeting started. Mr. Sterling, looking imposing in a dark suit, was by my side. The room was packed, the air thick with a mixture of hope and anxiety. On the stage, under a harsh spotlight, James was in the middle of a rambling, sweaty speech about navigating headwinds and pivoting towards a brighter future. He looked haggard. The strain of the last few months had carved new lines on his face. He hadn't seen us enter. We stood at the back, in the shadows, waiting. He built to his grand finale, his voice rising with false bravado. And now, he announced, a desperate, shiny smile plastered on his face, I want to bring to the stage the man who represents that brighter future. Our new strategic partner, a man whose investment will launch us into a new era. Please welcome Mr. Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Capital." A smattering of polite, hopeful applause rippled through the nervous crowd as Mr. Sterling walked calmly down the aisle and up onto the stage. I remained where I was, a silent observer. Mr. Sterling shook James's outstretched hand, a gesture as cold and brief as a snake bite. He turned to the audience and took the microphone from the stand. "Good morning," he said, his powerful voice booming through the sound system, silencing the room instantly. "There seems to be a slight misunderstanding. Sterling Capital is not here to partner with this company." A confused, uneasy murmur spread through the room. James's smile faltered, confusion clouding his features. He started to say something, but Mr. Sterling held up a hand, silencing him. He continued, his tone clinical and brutal. "In fact, over the past several weeks, my firm has quietly acquired a majority stake in this company's outstanding debt. As its primary creditor, we are exercising our legal options. Effective immediately, this company is being placed into receivership. It will be restructured and its viable assets will be liquidated to cover its extensive financial obligations." The room fell into a dead, shocked silence. You could have heard a pin drop on the cheap corporate carpet. The employees looked at each other in horror. James looked like he'd been turned to stone, his face pale and waxy under the stage lights. But Mr. Sterling wasn't finished. He gestured toward the back of the room, toward me. "And the executive from my team who identified this unique opportunity and who will be personally overseeing this entire transition as the new head of our Mergers and Acquisitions division is Ms. Emily Larson." Every single head in that room swiveled to look at me as I stepped out of the shadows and began to walk slowly down the center aisle. The sound of my heels clicking on the floor was the only sound in the entire auditorium. It was a long walk, and I savored every step. I let my eyes sweep across the room. I saw the stunned faces of James's employees, their hope curdling into fear and betrayal. I looked at my parents, their faces a mask of utter, slack-jawed disbelief. I let my gaze linger on Olivia, her hand flying to her pregnant belly, her face ashen with the sudden, terrible understanding of what was happening. And then, finally, I looked at James. He was still frozen on the stage, a statue of a broken man. He stared at me, and for the first time in years, he truly saw me. Not his quiet, supportive wife. Not a doormat he could wipe his feet on. He saw the architect of his ruin. I reached the front row and stopped, looking up at him. I gave him a small, tight smile. Checkmate. The aftermath was pure chaos. As people flooded out of the auditorium, a wave of anger, fear, and confusion washing over them, James pushed his way through the crowd. He grabbed my arm, cornering me near the exit. His confidence was gone, replaced by a raw, pathetic desperation. "Emily, you can't do this," he begged, his voice cracking. "Please. Think of everything we had. We can undo this. Think of the baby. What about the divorce settlement? My inheritance is tied up in the company. My lawyer will fight this, we can." I pulled my arm free from his grasp. I looked him dead in the eye, and the ice was back in my voice, colder and harder than ever before. "Your lawyer," I said, my voice low so only he could hear, "should be advising you on Chapter 11 bankruptcy, not a divorce settlement. This isn't revenge, James." I leaned in a little closer. "This is called accountability. You should have read the fine print on your loans." I turned and walked away without a backward glance, leaving him standing there, utterly broken amid the wreckage of his own making. Outside, the autumn air was crisp and clean. Nathan was waiting by a sleek black car, the engine running. He didn't say a word, just opened the door for me. As we pulled away from the curb, I glanced in the side mirror. I saw my parents trying to comfort a hysterical Olivia, while James just stood alone on the pavement, looking small and insignificant. I didn't feel a surge of triumph, not the hot flush of victory I might have expected. I just felt quiet. The constant, screaming noise that had been in my head for the past year had finally stopped. It was over. In the quiet of the car, I looked at Nathan. "It's done," I said. He gave a slow nod, his eyes on the road ahead. "No," he replied. "It's just begun." A year passed. Life moved on. The liquidation of James's company was messy and complicated, and the subsequent investigation into his financial fraud became a minor story in the business section. I heard through the grapevine that he avoided jail time but lost everything. His reputation was destroyed. Olivia had the baby, a little girl, and was raising her alone, struggling to make ends meet in a small apartment across town. They were no longer my concern. I poured all my energy, all my focus, into my work at Sterling Capital. My new, much larger salary was one thing, but the real power was in what I could now do with it. I had learned a hard lesson: financial independence is freedom. And I wanted to give that freedom to other women. With Mr. Sterling's enthusiastic backing and a significant portion of my own earnings, I established a foundation. We called it the Phoenix. Its mission was simple and direct: to provide financial and legal support for women whose careers had been derailed by a personal crisis, whether it was a messy divorce, a family illness, or a partner's financial betrayal. We offered grants to help with lawyer fees, to cover childcare during a job search, to fund a new business idea, to protect a child's college fund from being used as a pawn. At the Foundation's launch event, a small, elegant affair, I stood at a podium and told a version of my story, without using any names. "We are here," I said, my voice clear and strong, "for the women who were told their personal crisis was a professional liability. We are here for the women who sacrificed their own ambitions for someone else's, only to be left with nothing. We are here to provide the resources so they can not just rebuild, but build back stronger, on their own terms." Later that week, I had a conversation with Nathan. He asked me if I'd heard about Olivia's struggles. I told him I had. He looked at me, a question in his eyes. "What are you going to do?" The old Emily would have felt a pang of guilt, of familial duty. But I wasn't her anymore. "It's not for her," I said, my voice even. "It's for the little girl. No child should have to pay the price for the mistakes of their parents. And frankly, it's for me. It proves that what I'm building now is stronger than what I destroyed." The next day, I instructed the Foundation's administrator to do something. They were to find Olivia and send her a standard application package for a single mother's emergency support grant. It would come on official Phoenix Foundation letterhead. My name wouldn't be on it anywhere. It was an anonymous, clinical transaction. It wasn't forgiveness. It was justice, delivered impersonally, the same way a bank sends a foreclosure notice. It was my final, quiet move, closing a door I never intended to open again. Tonight, Nathan and I are in the house we bought together 6 months ago. It's a place filled with light and laughter, things I once thought I'd never have again. We were finally cleaning out the last few boxes in the attic when he found it, a small, dusty cardboard box labeled Memories. It was the last box from my old life. He held it out to me, his expression gentle and questioning. I took it from him. Inside was the framed wedding photo, a few old letters, relics of a life that felt like it belonged to someone else entirely. For a fleeting second, I thought about taking it out to the fireplace and watching it all turn to ash. But I didn't. "The only thing we should keep from the past," I said, more to myself than to him, "are the lessons." I walked to a corner of the clean, well-lit attic and placed the box on a high shelf. I wasn't destroying the past or burying it. I was just putting it away, acknowledging it was part of the foundation, however cracked and broken, that I had built my new life upon. It had its place. I closed the attic door, shutting the dust and shadows inside. Nathan was waiting for me at the bottom of the stairs. He took my hand, his grip warm and steady. We walked down together, into the bright light of our living room, where our future was waiting. And I felt, for the first time in a very, very long time, completely and utterly free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I felt it was important. My question for you is this: have you ever had to completely rebuild your life after a profound betrayal, and what was the first step you took to reclaim your power? Please share your story in the comments below. I promise I read every single one. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more true stories. It really helps the channel. Thank you.